Right, in my last video that I done was with regard to a sickle and the uses of a sickle, I mentioned a billock, comparing it to a sickle. It's totally different, it works on a different principle, so I thought I'd show you how I use a billock. So what you use a billock for as opposed to a sickle is that this is used for cutting wood, whereas a sickle is used for cutting grass or cutting brushing hedges. And the way to use this is to just get to the branch like that, cut it there, and that will go. Now then, there's a couple of things that you want to know. Always the first thing is safety. A couple of things that you need to know. If you do that, the one other thing is, don't get the hand behind the billock when you're cutting it, because it might slide off and it'll cut you. The other thing is that I do is wear gloves. I call them crisscross gloves. They're like rubber crisscross on the material, and that gives you a good grip, because you don't want to lose your grip. And if you miss like that, sometimes the billock will go, if it's your hand is shiny, it will slip out your hand and go flying across the landscape, and if there's somebody behind you, could get hit and get seriously hurt. So wear some gloves, A, to protect your fingers if you make a mistake, and B, to make sure that you can hang on to the billock. That's one thing. There's two other things I can think of offhand. One is, don't cut to the stick, cut through the stick, he used to say. He always said to me, because if you cut to the stick, you cut into there. If you're cutting through the stick, you're doing that. Your intention is to go past that stick. And therefore, you don't go to the stick, you go through the stick. And the other thing is, you might have seen me do it, is think before you cut. That's a very good bit of advice. You're cutting a piece of wood with a very sharp piece of thing, and you want to know what's going to happen when and after you cut it. So you think before you cut. Every time you cut, you pause. You get your trajectory right, and you get your weight right, and you cut before, and you think before you cut. You bring it up. Missed. But bring it up, and then you cut through the stick. The angle was slightly wrong there, and it was a bad place to cut. It doesn't happen every time, but that's it. So you've seen that, how that cut. Stick that on a little bit. You got these little boughs here. This is horrible timber. I call it New Zealand wood or trees, because I've been told that they come from New Zealand. Now, if you got, the other thing is, keep behind the tool. Don't put your hand in front of the tool, whatever, like this, because one of these days it's going to come across there and cut your thumb. And the other thing is that you keep behind the tool. If you're going up a branch like this, you keep here. And that's that. And then you think before you cut through the stick, not to the stick, think before you cut to the stick, not through the stick, think before you cut. And then one more, just one small one around there. And that's that. That's off the way. Very easily done, no effort at all. Now then, I've got some rough. That's off. Come here. Now then, the trouble is that when you've got a stick like this, and it's free to go like that, it's much harder to cut than if it's tied to the bough, to the tree, because if it's tied to the tree, it can't move. But if you got it free like this, when you hit it, it pushes, and therefore you've got to put much more weight into the cut than you would normally. And that's that. That's two. Now let's see what else we got. If you're using a billock, don't carry anything apart from the tool itself. that's on a knot. So that took a bit of cutting, but that's it. So now then, we've got, that's okay. I'm cutting them down to a size where I can put them through our little wood chipper. So these branches will go through the wood chipper. I think this is all we got left, but it's enough to show you that if you like that, it's worth a little pause. You wouldn't think so, but you know, the old boys used to come and say, think before you cut, think before you cut. And it works. It saved them. You didn't see many of the old timers with fingers missing, but you do nowadays because people want the easy way and they don't get taught. They get taught in school, whereas they ought to be taught out in the fields or out in the woods. If you got something like that, you want to take that off, you can go like that, especially the top of the tree, and go like that, and it breaks. Understand? So if you got a big bough, I have to think stuff all the while. If you get a big bough, and it's too big to cut in one go, I'll try and do it here. See, you can be ahead of the billock if you're well ahead of it, so you're not going to, but you don't want to do it here, you know. So otherwise you'll get into trouble quite quickly. And you think before you cut, see? It comes automatic after a while, you have a slight pause. And it's well worth training yourself to do that. It'll save you having to go up to the hospital. Alright? Now, just a few things to finish off. I got this little bit of stuff, all rhododendron, which is a pain in the backside, so to speak, but got to be done. So I'll just trim these out. This is the billock that I use, as I said before. This is the one I got. I brought the other billock now. That's the difference, you see. Now then, this originally looked that, but this is a heavier billock, and that is a braids, and this is much older than this one. You can tell by the handle, the difference in the handle. This is 1943 because it's got stamped on it. Severquick 1943, so I'm 2 years older than that actually. And this one I would say is the early part of the 20th century, which would be about more like the First World War rather than the Second. And I've also brought the sickle because I want to show you something with regard to that. When I done a video on the sickle, I said that I sharpen from there to there, very rarely here. So, and that's where we do sharpen it. We sharpen it like that. And you got that piece from there to there that's not sharpened, or only sharpened very rarely. And somebody would say, well, that's a waste of that part of the sickle. But actually, if you're brushing a hedge and you come to a part where there's a stick possibly like that that's sticking up, and it won't brush it. You know, you always brush upwards and you're taking the green growth off. When you come to something like that, you can then reach in the hedge and pull it out with your stick. And say you pull it out, so it's bending that way, and then you can cut it off. So, you know, in effect, do that with it. But you can cut that because I said you don't cut a sickle using green growth. But from there on then, you can, because you've got a stronger part of your sickle, and it doesn't matter too much about spoiling the sharpness of the blade, because you only use it much. So instead of cutting there, you cut it there. So you pull it out like that, and then cuts very effectively. So that's two ways of using the sickle. As I say, with that, with the hook there, it's to, when you lay a hedge, you cut it, and then you cut over half through the stick, 3/4 way through the stick, and then you bend it over and then you lay it down. Well, that part that you cut then is sticking up, and it will die, and therefore it'll go rotten, and it'll might make the whole of the branch go rotten as well, or die as well. So you cut that off, and you cut that off like that. But because it's very close to the ground, you can't get to it. But when you use it like that, you know, say it's coming up like that, when you use it like that, then you're able to do so. And that's the reason for the hook on the billock. All right. So that's a couple of things I thought I'd tell you. Now then, with regard to this, when you come to the end of something like this, and you want to cut through there, sometimes because that's loose, you can't cut it very easily. But if you do it like this, cut there, and then like that, and all you got to do then is do that, and it comes off. And instead of hacking away for 4 or 5 blows, you've got that. Now that's ready to go down for firewood, because that's big enough for firewood. So all we got left, this rubbish. I always call, you cannot call it rubbish if it's not much good for anything else. So we call this rubbish. We just got to do this off. The trouble with stuff like this, when it's small, it bounces away. You've got to really put some weight into it to get that cut. That one cut. Put the rubbish over there. Get that. There. There. Over there. Cut that in half. And we cut that in half as well. That'll be burned in our, make a fire up here one of these days. Think before you cut now. Keep your hand well above the stick. That's off. Here. There. That's that. Those can be burned over fire. That can be burned in the fire. We'll cut it one more time. I think. Don't really need to. And this is the last one. And that's it. So there we are. When we have a good downpour of rain to wet the woodland so we don't cause a fire, then we light the fire here and we burn all that up, and that's one other job done. So there we are. That's what we got left. Hope that's of some use to you. Right, bye.